Okay, cool.
Okay, we're recording. Hey, everybody, I'm Beau Jennings, and I am happy to um, be filling this fun slot for the Mercury Lounge every day this week. And today I am talking with an old friend, a good friend, and a very talented person. His name is James McAlister. Hey, James, how you doing?
Hey, dude, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking me to chat. I'm excited. Thanks for including me.
When I was thinking of people to talk to, I was selfishly thinking of people that I just haven't hung out with in a while
Yeah,
to
dude,
just catch up with. So that's what we're doing.
that's awesome. No, that's cool.
I'll do
That's
my best to keep this from being too many old jokes or inside jokes or things like that. But it'll go there eventually. But I think there's interesting things that people might like to hear.
yeah. Well, we'll try to not alienate like 99.9% of the audience in the first 2 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe all 10 people will keep listening.
Totally.
Okay, so James, you and I went to high school. I met you in high school, Broken Arrow High School, Tigers, and my first memories of you were actually, I hadn't met you yet, but our good friend Chris Castro had in wrestling practice an Esther Drain T-shirt, and
Rad.
it was a like a Zeppelin airplane and it had the words Esther Drain so small. I don't know how they even like screen printed that tiny on there. And I thought that's so weird. What is that? He said it's my friend's band. And I thought, oh, what a weird name. I wonder what that's all about. And then later I met you at lunch, I remember, and it all goes from there. But I bring that up because I wanted to talk about how you got started as a musician. Um, I think by the time high school happened, you'd been playing music for a while, and I knew from visiting your house and things like that that your dad was a musician. I don't want to talk too much, but the last memory I'll throw out is I remember coming to your house and there was a bus in the backyard and it said the Tulsa building on it. That was another like, what is this? This is so crazy. So let's start there. Talk to me about how you got started playing music.
Oh man. Yeah. So my dad had a really well, my dad only he's retired from music now, but he for his whole life he only played and sang Southern gospel music. So there's probably a few people that know what that is. It's a very specific little subgenre of gospel music. So he did that his whole life, kind of semi-professionally. And so um, before I played an instrument or anything, he naturally uh, we would go. I would travel with him and his band because what they would do, they were like semi-pro, so they all had day jobs Monday through Friday, and they would basically play Saturday night and then Sunday morning and Sunday night, like usually in different. Like Saturday night would be like a potluck or a VFW hall, like whatever, that kind of like a typically secular event. And then Sunday morning in a church, Sunday night at a church. We did that. I went with him and was like his roadie from like I think we really ramped that up when I was about 8 or 9. So and my mom ran sound. She was like the front of house engineer for the band. So it was like a family event. So I started out as the roadie, and then he kind of let me pick an instrument at some point, and then right after, and I wanted to play drums. So like right after, I'd only been playing a few months, or I think, and he just like threw me in. It was like, all right, you know all the songs, and there I was in a band with these like 40 to 50-year-old dudes, um, kind of right away, which was looking back on it, that seems crazy that those guys were like, oh man, and I think I was about 12 years old. So they were like, okay, cool. There's a 12-year-old drummer. Great. I can't. They were really gracious to have me uh, play. So that's how I started. Was like that at
Okay.
that age with that band.
Well, okay, so one question that comes to mind is, and I think I personally know the answer, but I could be wrong, and for other people's benefit, are there what what do they sound like? Are there popular, are there other known bands that you could say that they kind of did this vibe?
Well, it was a gospel quartet, so like four singers, and then a full like backing band, piano, steel guitar, like a Swiss Army knife guitar guy, bass, drums. So it was a large ensemble, and yeah, it was kind of in the gate, like like Bill Gaither,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, or like secularly kind of, it was like like Alabama, or like it was kind of that 80s 90s Nashville.
Statler Brothers, maybe? Is that a
Yeah, big time, yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so that it was kind of like I tell people all the time when I try, because I now I play music with a lot of people that have no clue. They've never even heard of that or heard that exists. So I've tried to describe it like, I feel like it's like early 90s Nashville hi-fi country,
Yeah.
like production. So, and it stayed there. It was like, which was cool. I think I still remember the first studio I was in with them too, because I got to go record eventually, and it was in Oklahoma City somewhere in a guy's house, and it was like I went in this drum room, and it was like a completely shag carpeted room, like floor, walls, ceiling, and the drum kit was stuffed with foam, like not like a little bit, like it was like rolled up egg foam, like stuffed inside the drum. I mean, it made no sound, but it was like it was like the most, but just tons of reverb, and it was. I wish I could go back there to this day and just see what that really was, but that was amazing to me
Yeah,
at the time.
I love that idea. It's like, let's record the sound of it. Now we don't want the sound of it. We'll add the sound later, but just
Exactly. Yeah, it
record
was. Yeah,
it.
it was like it was probably triggered and reverb and all. That's what I'm saying. Like all this kind of
Yeah.
90s music technology at its full tilt. So, but that's my sort of my music origin, was that stuff. So that's how I started playing.
I was talking, so my guest yesterday was my friend Bradley Beasley, who's a filmmaker, and we talked about his movie, a documentary he made about R.L. Burnside, a blues musician,
Uh-huh.
and he threw his, I think it was his son on the drums as well, or
Whoa.
grandson. I've got to go back and remember, but when he was really young and before he was ready, and he was playing, he was just playing gigs to a lot of people, and he was just like, "Hey, you're on the drums tonight."
Yeah, I mean, I had a few lessons. I was taking drum lessons, for, I can't remember how long it was. It's weird to think about this stuff in terms of like time, because
Yeah,
it's when you're that age, it's hard to remember. But I kind of knew how to play, but I wasn't. And I remember going to the first gig. It was in a church. It was a church somewhere in like middle of nowhere.
Sky
You
took.
know, yeah, exactly. It was a very like tertiary market. No offense against Skytook, it's a great place. Yeah, it wasn't Bartlesville. It was Sky. It was like they were warming me up in like a small market. But
Yeah.
it was I didn't even know I was gonna. No, I showed up and I remember the bass player didn't know I was gonna play. He was like, I was carrying in drums, and he was like, "Wait, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm playing drums." And he was like, "News to me." So it's just, yeah, it's funny to think. It's just funny to try to put myself in those guys' shoes. Like, what is happening right now? This kid is gonna. But the cool thing is, not just harp too much on that, but my dad's, we always had music around. He plays piano, and there was another guy in the band though that really really took me under his wing. He was a the steel guitar player, and he really if I had to say who's the biggest sort of teacher I ever had in of music, it was this guy Jim Watkins. So he would set up his steel guitar where he could like face me, where we could look like eye to eye, and just would like make, just talk to me, or like make eye contact, or like he would kind of move his body, like sort of like, here's the pocket, here's the beat, or he's like, slow down, you're rushing, or like, hey, pick it up, you're all that stuff. We did that kind of on most of the time, like on stage, and I was just glued on Jim, like, how do I, so I think that's a really, I think about that a lot. Like he taught me all that stuff about the drummer's role in the band, like keeping time and feel, like really feel was what his message was, which is pretty incredible that he is a very knowledgeable, deep musician. So
I love that. I love that he wasn't a drummer sitting there telling you how to do this.
I know. I mean, that's arguably maybe I couldn't be more fortunate, because it's like drummers aren't necessarily always thinking about the right thing, or always focusing on the right thing in terms, especially, somebody that's, I don't know. I actually don't know what I mean by that, but he was so rhythmically keyed in, and yeah, I mean, he was amazing.
Well, I think about that concept. Maybe this is where you're going, but I think about that concept sometimes of why, at least in theory, a live band performance is ideal or preferable to, at least in a recording situation, preferable to multi-tracking one thing at a time. And the thing that I always think about is if you have a four-piece band, guitar, bass, drums, and second guitar or piano or something. If a song doesn't feel right, I think the band is going to figure it out rhythmically, and they'll intuitively fill in those pockets. Whereas if you're multi-tracking, song doesn't feel right, this needs percussion, let's go at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have that option, the band's going to find those little, I guess, subdivisions or whatever you want to call that to fill that
Yeah.
gap and to fill in that swing or funk or whatever that's missing that you might otherwise just put a shaker on and, oh, well, that solved it. Kind of, but you had a more fundamental problem to begin with that it didn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the whole thing with drumming. I think that's where like that's the point of it, is it's got to feel right, kind of from the drummer's seat, and I feel really lucky that I got to sort of learn that kind of in a really kind of real environment, like with a live, like a 10-piece band, so and I took that knowledge and just kind of, I just ate it up. I was so into it that, I just loved every minute of it. Was so. And then the other thing that's funny about playing in churches was like half the time we were in some cavernous environment, and I was sitting there with a drum kit, and like nobody really wanted to hear the drums. They just wanted to feel them. So it was like, how quiet can you play? And so I'm doing all of this stuff, and Jim's kind of like, sort of like, oh, you're dragging, you're rushing. And he's also like, quieter, and it was like this whole, I just remember having this dance of like, this is really hard. I'm trying to have all this energy and authority, but be really quiet, and it,
So you're just a kid at this point. You're
yeah,
not
this was like, yeah,
you're not playing your drums. You're not playing drums because you heard Nirvana. Or you're not like
yeah,
you're not rebelling against anything yet, or you're not trying to just be rock and roll guy. You're just so it's almost like you almost had this more pure approach to the instrument, like how do I do this properly instead of how do I express angst or something.
yeah. I mean, anybody that knows me, that probably isn't too much of a surprise, but yeah, it's like I just really had it was a really that's not how I started. You're right. It was a very like sort of just, I guess, just different than the typical story of like, the garage band thing. And I got into that later, um, but not till after having that foundation, And it was just because I didn't necessarily think it was that weird at the time, because it was just my dad's music. That's just what was there. It wasn't, and his culture was all sort of centered around that music and that alone. And that's what's funny is my mom was the one that kind of knew about rock and roll, and so she would always tease him, kind of like, he didn't listen to the Beach Boys, he didn't listen to the Beatles. So she kind of brought that to the table for me, and which I'm thankful for. So that was, but yeah, that's kind of the. Oh, one anecdote I wanted to share about Jim was like, so we'd been playing for a while, and he, at some point, I think I was probably like 14 or 15. He invited me, because I don't know if you know about steel guitar players are like, they band together, like it's a serious, that's like a band of brothers and sisters, like it's a club, and they had, I mean, way back they had message boards, and it's a very tight-knit community. So he was into these steel guitar jam sessions that they would do, where like everybody in the area that played steel would get together at the VFW or whatever, and just like set up their steel guitars in a circle and just like play tunes. And we're talking like 25, 30 steel guitars. And so Jim was like, dude, you got to come be the house drummer at this like steel guitar jam this Saturday morning. And I was like, oh, I'm all over that. So he picked me up, and we drive out. It was in Kellyville, or near Kellyville, Oklahoma. And it was all these rad dudes. I think a lot of them were just like farmers, and they just had steels. And this is when they played, was like, and it was so cool. And the craziest like cacophony of like 20 steel guitars kind of playing together, and people would take.
It sounds like a weird backwater oaky psychedelic thing that.
Dude, it totally was. I don't know. Yeah, that was one of the most unique musical experiences I think ever for me, was that jam. And I only did one or maybe two, but it was so cool. And so it's like, it feels like it's from another time and another planet almost.
Thank God a meteor didn't hit that building. We'd lose like all
I know.
forever.
I know. It was.
Well, I had one more question about the Tulsans. I don't want to spend all the
Yeah.
my time on them, but these are questions I have always wanted to ask you about the Tulsans, because I just love the whole concept. Um,
Yeah.
did they make money? I just think about four dudes and then a full
No.
band. And I think my first thought is, of course, they didn't make money. Then I think, well, they played churches. Maybe they
Right.
did make money. But I'm just curious.
Yeah, because that's a thing now. I mean, yeah, that's an industry for sure. Lots of people make a lot of money doing. But no, they were kind of in a weird little, even more of a subgenre, because it was like small churches, like country churches. It wasn't like mega church zone or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just like a pass the hat. It was called a love offering, So.
Oh, right, of course.
And I suppose I could ask my dad. Maybe they had guarantees on some of the bigger things, but no. I mean, my folks and all the guys in the group, I mean, just spent. I think they spent money to keep it going, and because my dad had the bus, right, and he had to fill this giant gas tank.
The bus.
I mean, hundreds of gallons of gas. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And it broke down occasionally, and yeah, and there was just he had to buy. They were buying lunch for everybody and dinners, and it was a investment for sure.
I have to assume there was a bit of a this is a ministry subtext going on that
Yeah,
it wasn't
100%. Yeah,
the business. But
yeah. That's the difference, I think, between I think that's just a unique place to be from for my dad. It wasn't a career in music. I mean, it was like his love and his passion, and he's probably just it's probably all he thought about.
Yeah.
But he had to have another job like his entire life with, still, he's retired now, but yeah, that's how it worked, So
Yeah.
he was definitely skeptical of whether or not I could make a living playing music. That's for sure, because he didn't really see how it could happen. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
he saw that other people were doing it, but he didn't have, that wasn't his path. So he was always kind of like super supportive, but also just like, I don't know, like good luck, kind
Right.
of.
I try to put myself in his shoes today and bring in my family to shows I play and my wife running sound and I feel like the only way it's kind of it pays no bill for me, but I don't lose money either. But even that barely makes it okay at this point in my life.
Yeah.
And I anyway, I love kind of diving into that aspect of it of
Well,
what
I could talk
I
on
do.
that too. I mean, it's something that it's almost, some might say it's almost you. I think you, in your case, and maybe in my dad's case too, it wasn't about, it's more of a pure expression, because it's not really, you're not just like you're not putting on a show for any other reason other than it's what you believe in, So
Sure.
um, those of us, I think that, especially like when you're talking like the side musician path, we have to do lots of things that we wouldn't want to share, we wouldn't be proud of, or wouldn't be want necessarily even want people to know that we're doing, just to kind of make ends meet, sometimes. So it's I've thought about that too. It's kind of like there's a freedom creatively, and kind of uh, there's a freedom to it, to not having to be connected to an economy for survival.
I
So
think about that all the time. In my case, there's a ton of freedom that comes from lack of commercial reach, you know? There's
yeah,
like you can just do whatever you want. And
that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And I think you do get to like a pure place, really. So hopefully all of us that make music are putting that as a priority, and aren't just doing whatever sells. I think most people would, in their own way, are trying to do that.
tell me how you got from the Tulsans to playing early Esther Drang. There might have been musical things in between, but early Esther Drang, from what I understand, was essentially a metal band.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of like, I'm trying to think like what Bryce and Kyle were like. They were older. We also, they went to Broken Arrow High School, where we met.
Tigers, did I say that? Tigers.
Yeah, BA Tigers, exactly. Um, and so they were like a couple grades older. There he is,
Sorry, just I don't know where this came from.
dude. It just, yeah, it just happened to be there.
Did you see it?
Dude, I actually, I got this too, like product placement.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
This is my favorite hat, and I
But
wear it every day.
did you get one of these too?
Dude, I didn't get that. I need to talk to somebody about getting a deal on that.
So anyway, my band, I just okay. Anyway,
Yeah. No, so yeah,
thing.
Bryce and Kyle are these two guys that were older, and they I was am friends with Kyle's younger brother John, uh, and so anyway, somehow Kyle and Bryce wanted to make music, start a band, and like John told him, "Oh, hey, my friend James is a drummer. You should." Anyways, I don't know how I think it was just like I was the only drummer that they knew.
It was you three guys to start with, and
Yeah, yeah, and it was like really sludgy, like riff. I don't know if it was metal. It was more like Helmet was kind of a thing. Like, I don't know if you know that Helmet, like
very
so kind of groovy metal, maybe groove metals. I don't know. It was
Okie groovy.
um exactly. So we played we got together in Jan, and that was my first like garage band at like high school stuff, and that was rad. And we all lived in BA, so we were all close, and I think we practiced in. Oh no, we always ever since day one. I think Bryce's house was like the band hang, so we would just play hours of music over there.
Yeah.
Um,
What did
and
you?
so that,
What?
yeah,
Well, I cut you off, but
no,
tell me about tell me about what you learned there. Like you learned a lot. You learned what you learned in the Tulsans and from Jim, and you probably are consciously or not throwing all that out the window to some degree and trying a completely new path and maybe seeing what you can bring along still. Just tell me how your mind
yeah.
worked as you made that jump.
I actually weirdly don't think it felt that different. I think that's what's strange is, yeah, I mean, it just was like, I, I think we just liked hanging out, and it was like, it was cool. It was just novel to me that there was these guys that were really nice guys, and had cool haircuts, and like had like really loud amps, and that was just kind of fun. And I guess that's what's so interesting is it didn't seem that different, which I mean, musically you're right. It couldn't have been more different, but I think it was just, that was I was just so hungry for playing with any time I could sit behind the drums. That's what I wanted to do. So, and actually I can't remember, but I think we started, yeah, I played drums, and then we went on for like a year or maybe less. And then another guy named Sterling Williams, who's a rad dude. Love that guy. He started playing drums, and because I think I was like, I think we just wanted him to be in the band, or he was in a different band. We loved his band. What were they called? It doesn't matter. It was just one of those things where it was more about like we just were trying to build a band of just more people that we wanted to hang out with. So I started playing keyboards at that point, and Sterling played drums. So
Was that something you'd always just fiddled with on the side and it was
yeah, yeah, totally.
all of a sudden you can play piano?
I guess so. I mean, I at that point I couldn't even play piano. I was just sort of, we had a couple old synths. In fact, my dad, somehow I was in a pawn shop on 21st and Sheridan, next to Casa Bonita, and
Also
I
started
found,
21, the comic book store.
oh, dude, that place was great. Um, is it still there? I don't know if it's still there.
I don't know. I don't think
Shoot.
Big Flash is there anymore either. I think it's
What?
been renamed.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole other show, right? Where we go through
Yeah.
like Tulsa nostalgia. So yeah, this pawn shop, I found a Roland Juno 60, which is like a big analog synthesizer, and it honestly just looked really interesting to me, and I'd sort of like felt like I'd seen somebody with something like that, and I convinced my dad to buy it for me. It was like, I think it was $200, which felt like a big deal. And he bought me that, and I took it to band practice with Esther Drang, and they were just like, what? That wasn't like I don't think they were really trying to do like synthesizers, at that point. So
Yeah.
that was that. I just sort of brought it, and they let me just kind of add it to the songs, and
Surely
but
that
yeah,
was a little bit of a surely that was a little bit of a big bang moment though for the sound of the band. I mean, you're introducing a whole new element and this like we could do other sounds all of a sudden.
yeah, I think it was like, that's what was so cool for me, and I guess it's something that I still do, which is I just felt like being kind of, when you're behind the drums, you're just kind of, you're the drummer, you're like the engine, and you have to just always play essentially, so when I got off of getting off of the kit, I was able to tinker and do all these other sort of sound experiments that I became just as passionate about. I loved that, and I still do. So yeah, that was buying that keyboard was like a really pivotal point in my life too. I think it was just like, it was this whole world of sound that I didn't know about before.
You still have it?
Uh, I still have it. I don't want to move my thing, but it's like it's sitting right behind me. It's
I
just right.
I trust you.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, so that takes us through high school, right?
Yeah,
We
totally.
and you played in the Pride,
Yeah,
the Pride Broken Arrow.
yeah, totally. That was also really great to have such a great to be in such a strong band program there, and went through all that. And even musically, I was able to add this. I had some really great instructors there that I added a lot of technical stuff to my drumming, getting into the marching band thing there.
And
And
for people that may not know, and I'm a little ignorant too, but from what I remember, I had some friends when I went to OU later in college. I had a couple friends in the Pride of Oklahoma, the OU marching band.
yeah,
And I told them I was from Broken Arrow, and they're like, "No, that's a band." And I remember, and I like music, I play music, but marching band is something I don't know how to assess. Like if I'm at a football game and I'm watching the halftime show, I can appreciate some of the choreography, but I can't really tell what an amazing marching band is from a good one. I can maybe spot a really bad one, but a lot of it gets lost on me. But I just always remember that wow, Broken Arrow has a really great marching band.
yeah. I mean,
I'm not true.
I no, it's great. No, they're like, they that's the kind of the I haven't checked in a while, but that was sort of the
This is 1998.
yeah, exactly. That's a long time ago. But that was like their main sort of focus of the school music program was the marching band. So, and
Yeah.
I didn't really honestly, I didn't like it, but I liked the drum line was really fun, and I liked getting to play drums again. I just was like sort of doing anything I could do to just like gain information and gain knowledge, and just uh again, I wasn't really, luckily, I mean, I think back now and I'm like, man, there were people there, I had friends that were a little more aesthetically tuned in, that were like, I'm not doing that. That's not cool at all. Like
Just more
they
like
would
rock at the time, and
say, what's that? Sorry.
maybe a little more punk rock than too punk rock.
Yeah, exactly. So like that, I mean, and that was just I wasn't quite there where I wasn't quite judging it, the aesthetic of it more. I just was into
Yeah.
playing drums, so that's it would be really hard. Like I have kids now, and I think about, there's a high school down the street from us, and I hear the marching band practice, and I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine suggesting that either of my kids join the marching band. But like for me, it was a really great set of tools to add to my musical vocabulary. It really was. So
Yeah. Um, that's that kind of I'm jumping around a little bit, but that concept of just always that I think has helped you so much is you've always just been seemed super hungry to learn more and just kind of expand your palette, and it makes me think of it. So now we're jumping ahead a few years, but I remember you telling me a story about you must have been on tour, or maybe you were living in LA. I honestly forget at this point, but you sought out this kind of legendary drummer that had been forgotten, or was just in one way or another he was accessible to you. Um,
yeah.
I won't say anything else about it, but just tell me that story of you seeking out
Oh,
a lesson from this guy.
yeah. So and I know exactly what it was. It was, I was here for some weird reason. I lived in Tulsa at the time still. Maybe, yeah. And we were here rehearsing for a tour with Sufjan, here in LA. And so I sort of did some internet research and found out. No, I have a friend, another drummer friend that had this drummer James Gadsden's contact, his phone number, and he, I was such a huge fan of his work. He most famously was Bill Withers' drummer. So I just sort of I
Hey,
I just kind of pick
hold
up the
that thought.
phone and like,
Hold that
oh
thought.
yeah,
I'm gonna grab my dog.
oh yeah, sure.
Riley, cut it out. Cut it out. Come here.
It's funny. My dog was just barking too. I just don't think you could hear it.
It's gonna have you do a drum fill or tell a joke or something.
I could have just like, yeah, exactly.
Um,
Um, no,
okay,
so
so did you know who he? Did you know that that was his like resume at the time, or?
oh yeah, no, I knew exactly who he was because I have been such a fan of like Ain't No Sunshine and Use Me and all these classic Bill Withers hits, you know, and actually I think this might have even been after, this was after Beck's Sea Change too, which was sort of in some ways was like a new uh brought James back to the forefront of like people were like, oh wait, there, you know, this guy's still, he's been doing music this whole time. And but for the younger folks like us, we heard him on Sea Change and we're like, oh my gosh, what is, you know, who is this guy? And then I went back and connected the dots. Oh, he's from all of these other classic hit songs, you know. He so yeah, he just was really, just couldn't have been cooler. And I just called him up out of the blue, like, hey, I'm here visiting, and I don't know if you do this, but I would love to come do a lesson if you have an afternoon or even an hour. And he was like, yeah, totally, like, come on down. Like, just the coolest guy. Like, he couldn't have been less he could have been so much more skeptical of me, you know, and he just was like really gracious. And so yeah, I just drove over to his house. I rented a car, drove to his house, um, and just was, I couldn't believe I was doing it too. As I was like, this is insane. And we went into, he has a studio behind his house, and he just was like, hey, let's, and he sat, what else do you do? Like, he sat me down, I sat behind his kid, and he was like, all right, play something, you know, like, he just was like, show me what you got, kind of, you know, like, and I, just because I was so nervous, I like, and I wish we had the song to play for folks. This actually would have been a good thing to do. Anyway, the song "Use Me" by Bill Withers. It's a very famous song. I kind of accidentally played a groove sort of like that, just because I was like, I was just kind of nervous, you know, like, how about that, you know? And he was like, oh yeah, he's like, that reminds me. Then he was really sweet. He's like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of "Use Me." And he's like, can I show you how can I show you how I play it? And I was like, oh, please. And he sat down and played it, and it was like, I was like sobbing. It was so beautiful. And I recorded all this too. I have to go back and find it, but he let me record our lesson, and he had some just amazing information for me, and he just kind of told me his story too about being a drummer and being kind of and he'd been doing it for, you know, at that point 40 years, and he still works to this day. So so he's and you know, and I kept in touch with him too. Like, a couple other things happened a few years later, and I remember having a discouraging recording session in Seattle with somebody, and I just called James, and I was like, man, this happened, I'm really bummed. They basically, I got fired, or they just were like, we're gonna get somebody else. And he just laughed, and I was like, oh yeah, man, like, I can't tell you how many times I've been fired off sessions. And he's like, he dropped all these names. I was like, yeah, they didn't, you know, he's like, you just got to do what you do and don't worry about it. You know, he just was so kind and so gracious. So anyway, but that's one of those things that I realized, you know, being in LA now that I've been here a while, it's like, there's just legends like that everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so cool when they take time to just get with like a note, you know, just a total stranger, and like share their some of their information and their experiences.
It makes me wonder how many dudes actually would do that. Just look up a legend and just call them and say, "Can I come over?" there's probably
Yeah.
a few people that do, and so they probably just say, "Yeah, come on."
He was so complimentary and so encouraging, so that was an amazing. um and I kind of had another years later had another experience like that, and it was a little different, because it wasn't I didn't reach out to Jim Keltner, who's like obviously our, um I mean, my total hero, hometown hero, but we ended up, a really good friend of mine basically set up a session where and hired us both to play drums on the session. So I remember I got to have another one of those sort of like mind blowing experiences, playing with my other favorite drummer, and in the room with him, which was just it gives me chills just thinking about it now. But
What what record were you making with him?
this an artist by the name of Dan Phelps, who's a solo guitar, amongst other things, but he's been lately doing these, kind of sonically adventurous guitar music, and he had a concept like, hey, his favorite drummer is Jim Keltner, so he's like, I want to go down to LA and improvise with Keltner for a day, just me and him, and just see what comes of it, and so he did that, and then he called me up, and he's a really close friend, and he said, hey, I'm going to do this thing with Jim, and I want you to come in on day 2, and we'll do the three of us improvising. And I just was like, I couldn't even believe. And actually, it was like right before. It was one of those things that I barely could have missed because of a scheduling thing, and it was like, it had been one day on either side, I couldn't have done it, but it was this magical. It was insane.
So
So
cool.
yeah,
All right, let's back up a little bit. Esther
yeah.
Drain, Scooch, and honestly, real quick, do you by chance have a timer on your? Do you have any clue how long we've been talking?
I have zero clue.
Me too.
Shoot. So does that mean at some point we're just gonna get the hook?
Maybe. I think. Well, I paid for a pro thing. I think we can talk as long as we want. If I
Oh,
have
okay.
to cut it short for the live stream, maybe there's a hidden content people can find later or something. But we'll
Oh,
just
okay.
we run out of stuff. Um,
Okay. Cool.
um, okay, Esther Drang, you guys graduate high school. You start getting into touring. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah. So I went to TU, and I kind of think, yeah, around my 4 years of TU was really when that band started to really take it seriously. Um, and gosh, I'm trying to think, we we played a ton of shows around town, and back then there weren't that many places to play. I don't know, you remember that, Beau? Like, it was like we had, I think our first gig was at the Eclipse, um, and then there was like couple other bars we played, and then but in those days we were kind of mostly putting on our own shows. So I remember we would rent out, we did a really memorable show. I remember the Living Arts Space, which at that point was, gosh, I can't remember where that was. uh I think they've moved now to a new spot, but anyway, there weren't a lot of venue options. So, and we weren't a cover band, so we weren't like we couldn't get into that world. So, but eventually we just sort of made friends with some other bands. I can't remember. I guess Dennison is a friend that we made pretty early on. Dennison Whitmer, and he's in Philadelphia, and you know how it works. You kind of like make friends with one band, and then one artist, and you can kind of like, that sort of expands your options. So we long story short, we just started, I think, did everything we could to cobble some tours together, and then uh that just sort of exploded, or not exploded, but it got bigger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um and I remember playing. I remember being gone. Sorry, I'm gonna plug my phone in here. I remember missing a lot of days from school at TU. I don't know how that worked, or like, again, I just remember my professors kind of being like, okay, like I guess that's cool, and I just would be gone for weeks at a time, you know. And I don't know. I honestly don't know how that works with school, but everybody was weirdly supportive of it, and it just kind of came together. So that sort of brought us, and we got a record deal, and an indie record deal, and you know, put out two records and toured a ton. We played, you know, at that point we played probably 150 shows a year or something. Uh, and that was rad because we made a bunch of friends in Seattle. We made a bunch of friends in California. We had our friends like Dennison in Philly, and it's just so cool how that works. How you sort of like, you go from just like, this is your world, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then it just like next thing you know, your community is all over the country. And that again also is like we weren't successful. It was very small, and nobody was making any money, but it allowed us to sort of get out and get out into this larger community, which it ended up, you know, I still have friends. I still have musical connections I made then in like the early 2000s.
Sure.
So
And it seems like you never know which one of those uh, branches is gonna have more of its own. And I'm thinking specifically of Denison, and not that
yeah,
Denison is I remember you guys playing music together, and there was a lot of great music you guys played together. And I remember, specifically talking to you one time. I don't know if we're on the phone or what. And you were just like, "Yeah, I'm on tour with my friend Dennison, and then we're opening for this guy Sufjan Stevens." And so, things just something's always leading to the next thing.
yeah,
You know,
totally.
that's
Yeah. That's, I mean, I can see that now. Since you're kind of leading me to sort of dissect the whole, you know, trajectory of where I've gone. It's true. Like Dennison's recommended me to play with Suf, and that's a funny story too. If I can just skip to that. So uh, I remember Sufjan calling me. I was in Best Buy in Tulsa, like 71st and whatever that is.
that was an exciting place at certain times.
Dude, Best Buy.
Yeah, I loved just going to buy CDs there.
Dude, there was sort of a beautiful era of the big box retail for us, I think. But when it was like the Barnes and Noble was like sort of it was our cultural hub in a way, you know.
I
And
wasn't
we're
I wasn't hip enough to go to like Starship Records and Tapes. That was a little spooky, but suburban Broken Arrow kid. Actually, it was actually way closer to my house too, and your house too. But
yeah,
suburban
yeah,
Broken
dude.
Arrow, that Best Buy felt safer, and just I don't know.
That's so funny. I don't know how many people can understand or relate to that, but it's like that is our life. Like
Yeah.
that was this, and you're right. Like Starship just felt like I had to book a flight to get there. I don't know why it felt so far away when we were in high
It felt,
school, but
it felt far away.
Mohawk.
So it also was, and I wouldn't have got this reference at the time, but there was um, what's the movie? Almost not almost famous, but with John Cusack, who works at the record store.
Oh, the High Fidelity.
Yeah, there was that kind of
Yeah,
vibe to it. Just kind of like, you better know what you're doing if you come in here. You know.
totally. Yeah, and one step more friendly, I guess, maybe was Mohawk Music, which ended up that was so cool, and I did end up shopping there a lot. Um, uh, they were awesome, and they had, remember the days of import CDs. They had all these import CDs, and
Yeah.
uh, that
Good.
was a great place. Yeah. So anyway, so
Calls you
yeah,
at Best Buy.
Steve calls me. I'm at Best Buy, and I'm like, hello, and he was like, hi, my name is Sufjan. At that point, we hadn't met. This is like a cold call, and he was like, "Hey, I got your number from Dennison. I'm looking for a drummer for this West Coast tour, and just
Where
wondering if you're
was
available."
he a New York guy at the time?
He lived in New York, yeah, still does.
Why is he calling a kid in Broken Arrow?
Dude, that's what I'm saying. I have no.
Not that you didn't have the ability, but that's a lot of logistics.
I know. I think it was just. It comes down to just luck, complete luck and complete. Just it's that social connection that he was really close with Dennison and trusted Dennison, and Dennison was like, well, if anybody that I can think of, because I guess the other thing is they were going to have to fly to San Diego anyway. So he's like, well, I guess logistically that makes like a tiny bit of sense, but the fact that he just would sort of cold call me and just be like, on recommendation, like that seems crazy. So
Knowing him a little bit, I can also see him wanting to throw in just that variable just to keep things from being too safe. Just knowing, again, just knowing
yeah,
how he likes to approach things, I can see him
yeah,
saying, this will be crazy, or this will be variable at least.
yeah. I mean, again, I think it's like I talked about Bryce and Kyle in high school. I also just don't think he knew any other drummers. It was like just like you have a drum set, you can play the drums. Okay, you're hired. So
Yeah.
it's great. I love sharing that because that does seem like
It's like your dad throwing you on the drums that Sky took.
exactly, yeah, same exact. I don't know why. Yeah, that's there's so many funny things to think about there. So
What record was
that
this tour for?
that was for Michigan. So he'd already recorded Greetings from Michigan, and got sort of offers to play shows, and he had played shows kind of around the New York area with his friends, and kind of pieced together a band. But this was to be the first like real band, of like whatever, like musicians. So we met in San Diego and rehearsed for a couple days, and did a 9/5 tour up, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, and it was awesome. It was amazing.
People, and was he Jim Stevens yet? Was it a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, there were small venues like I'm trying to think. We played the Casbah in San Diego, and LA was bigger. It was the no, it was the Troubadour. So it wasn't huge. It's probably a few, five or 600 people, I think, maybe. But I remember the Troubadour was like way oversold, packed crowd. Like, yeah, people were, even at that point, it was like instant. People were losing their minds. So, and I could probably count on one hand how many shows I've ever played with Suf that weren't completely sold out. Like, and that's like worldwide. He's just always had such a passionate fan base.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that led to, we did the tour, and then he had me come out shortly after that, had me come out to New York, and we recorded the next album, which was Illinois. And then it's like I've worked, helped him out on stuff ever since.
Um, was that kind of did that kind of, it seemed just from knowing you personally, that was basically your full-time job at that point in your life. You weren't really doing other bands or many other studio gigs. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that too. Like that's not really, I mean, it can't really be that, because to be honest, it wasn't really, we weren't working that much where it was actually much of an income for anybody. I think it was like, I just had sort of been able to piece together like, okay, I'll make $300 doing this, and I'll like, whatever I'll do a couple drum lessons with people, and then I don't know how I did it. And honestly, I lived at my parents' house. That's a big part of how I did it. So I still lived at home at that point, and just was trying to, was doing everything I could to just keep my overhead where I could continue to play. You know, and my parents were extremely supportive in that too.
Oh, my dog's freaking out. Hold on.
Oh
Uh,
shoot,
This is Wiley, by the way.
dude, Wiley's looking extra Ewokian right now.
Yeah, that's his whole thing. Be cool, bud.
That's rad.
Take a seat. I'm still talking to my buddy James. Um, and then okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead just in case we are coming up on our time limit, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
stop either. But
Oh
okay,
yeah.
so I know that I know Sufjan lived in was it Kensington part of Brooklyn? Not giving
Yeah.
it away here, but just that kind of neighborhood, and his neighbors included Aaron and Bryce.
Yeah.
Um, and so talk about that kind of jump from, or it may not, it may be a concurrent thing, but just talk about that kind of growth and
Well, yeah. So we, gosh, I'm. That was kind of. I was going to New York pretty often, like to record, or we'd rehearse, or there'd be shows, and maybe once every few months I was there. So we, yeah, we just kind of. I met Bryce first through Suf, because they were both really close friends at that point, and Suf really liked Bryce's a bunch of his music, and the
oh
National
yeah,
was
this
a
Aaron and
band.
Bryce from the National. Should
Yeah,
say.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and the National was a band, but they weren't really on our radar. I wasn't aware of them, and I just knew Bryce kind of from other channels, from sort of his contemporary classical world, which is what we would go see him do stuff, see him play pieces, and all that kind of thing. So he had this band. He was in this rock band on the side, basically called the National. So but that was a really great time though, because Aaron and Bryce lived on the same street. Bryce lived a few blocks. Sufjan lived a few blocks away. It was just a really cool like musical community. And that sort of went on and on, and we ended up recording a little bit. Aaron had a studio behind his house, and that became where we would work on stuff. Me and Suf and Casey, and yeah, we were just really good. We were just like, it's just like that, the closest to like a scene that I ever was a part of, where it was just like a bunch of really nice people doing music, and and it always felt like a family thing. So yeah, so I didn't really uh in regards to then working with the National now that wasn't ever on my radar, because they were just our friends, and we were close, again, we were close friends, but it wasn't like, it took years for that to really turn into making music together, which is, I think, a lot of times how it can go.
Sure. So
um,
I'm thinking of a funny or just kind of interesting angle here, and follow me for a second, but um, I'm thinking of you jumping from the Tulsans to Esper Drang and that kind of gap musically, and then
uh,
um, and then from Esther Drang to uh, Sufjan's music, which is I know Esther Drang trended towards that more ornate and kind of expanded palette, I guess you could say, and then Sufjan kind of took that extremely far, and then um, I'm thinking of the National as just this kind of rock and roll band, relatively speaking. And
yeah.
I came and saw you guys last summer, and I remember talking to you after the show in Minneapolis, and I forgot what happened exactly, but it was just kind of like a rowdy ending. And I remember asking you, are most shows that way, or are you guys a little more like, generally, are you more like just like tighter, or because that was unexpected for me as someone that listens to their music. And I hear the records, it feels a little more controlled and you know kept tight, and the show just felt like we're really letting loose. But I'm just kind of thinking of those swings and your who you played with from one to the other.
Yeah. I mean, and so I I think that's the funny thing about me is I think I've sort of, I really don't feel like I've been very I've just kind of followed where I've landed in a way, you know. So I don't know. Um, it's been so nice to it's been such an amazing opportunity to play with the guys in the national, because it is that, and it is, I guess, in my, it's really filling a hole that I've had in my, I was kind of just wanted to play in a rock and roll band, you know. Like I don't think I had like a great, or maybe not always, but I just feel like it's allowed me to just do some, just kind of like and it's, the funny thing is, it's so not just, it's not really, it's not like
It's not like the
uh,
White Stripes or the Black Keys or something.
at least in terms of what I've, my um the things I've gotten to be a part of, it's a really nice breath of fresh air to play in a band like that. You know, it's, they're such amazing people, and the shows are really the shows are very improvised. You know, or there's a lot of wiggle room there, which is really nice. Whereas with Soof, there's zero of that. I mean, it's very structured, you know. So yeah, again, it's, I just feel that's a good observation. Like there's been a lot of pivots, you know, which I think is really kept it interesting for me. And it's hard, because in some ways I'd kind of like to, you know, it'd be cool to do. I've never been very comfortable, if that makes sense. Like I've always felt like I've been slightly outside of my comfort zone in every possible situation, you know. So um, I've just
What's
kind of
like,
learned to embrace that, I guess.
yeah, what's like the ideal thing if someone's like, this is your band for the rest of your life, and you can choose like what the vibe is and where you play, but what is that?
Like if someone's asking me that question,
Yeah,
like
I guess
this,
so. Yeah.
man, I don't know. That's a really, now that you're putting me on the spot, that's a really tough question. I think as I get older, I do want to play. I want to get back to. I want to play like rock and roll. You know, I want to play. I want to be. I want to be in the. But the thing is, I want it to be like, you know, I want to be in, you know, the Mad Dogs and Englishmen band from in 1970, whatever that is. You know, like I don't know. That's a little too. That's never going to happen. So
Yeah.
or but when we haven't even talked about a band, one of my favorite bands I've ever been in was the band I had with you called Lasso. Such that was one of the most fun times of my life. It was so rad.
Let's break that down real quick. Our friend Tim Miser, a songwriter that oh, I I name drop him on my record.
Oh, nice.
Um, the song Jimmy Houston, look it up. You're gonna love it. But he was I knew Tim just as a local Tulsa songwriter guy, and this was, before I knew too much about anything. I just really liked his music. And I look back and he I don't know what he reminded me of. It was just moving and it was good songwriting. I knew that much at the time. And and I knew you guys were buds and I was already friends with you. And then somehow or another the band happened. The band starts and that
I
yeah.
know. Good question. Like I don't know how that happened. You know, it's like we just sort of, I don't know. Yeah, we wanted to. I think we all looked up to Tim so much and loved his music. We just wanted to be in his band, and he, being the like wonderfully democratic person that he is, was like, well, let's make it a. This is a band. You know, you guys aren't my backing band. We're gonna make it a band. So
Yeah.
we didn't play that many shows, but man, they were all so memorable and
One of my favorite memories were rehearsals at Deb's house because I kid you not, there was a song that we used to rehearse. I don't remember anything about it except that I liked it and we never recorded it. And I just remember thinking I would love to hear that particular song again because it was just so like fulfilling to like play it. It felt so good. And we made the record that we made, and I can still back and listen. I can still listen to it back and have great memories. And I think we got almost there, but I think there was something that we did, at least when we rehearsed or played, that we didn't quite capture. I'm not sure what that was. I think the record had a little bit more of a country sound than what we really were, and
Yeah.
we probably had a little bit more of a like an Oasis or a Travis vein that we wanted to hit. I wasn't the lead guitar player to get us there, but that's the sound we wanted, And I
Yeah.
listened back, and it would have been great to make have made that record.
I know, man. It's just that you kind of have to think about it. You're like, now that we're looking back on it, we're like, we can both agree that it was like, it really, we really had we had kind of the makings of a band, and that's what's been so cool to see, to be playing in the National this past year, is like, they're a band, that's like five guys that have just, they like, they've just been through everything together.
Yeah.
And there's something so cool about a band like that, and it's something that all the bands I've been in just never quite made it sort of through the gauntlet, and so me hanging out and playing, being so close with those guys has kind of made me think back to Esther Drang, Lasso, and some of these, like how, and it's helped me understand their dynamic, because I think about art, how we interacted, and how it is when you're in a band with your best friends,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
there's something so cool about it. And I think the audience, I think that's what people, I think that's a big reason why people love bands, is it's just like, there's this energy there that's so electric.
It's such an elusive thing for that to work very long.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I'm always a little sad thinking back, like, oh man, I wish that one of those bands could have sort of still be active. And you never know, it's like that. But again, as we're talking about this, all our paths are so unique, and
Yeah.
filled with so much luck, and we've, anyway, it's just it is something to bands are something to marvel at, for sure. It's like, it's
So
a,
again, I have no idea how long we've been talking, but assuming we've been talking too long, tell me about your solo recordings.
oh yeah, so um I put out an EP last June, of some, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's instrumental electronic ambient music. And that's kind of that's my passion project, I guess you'd say. That's the kind of the music that I make when I'm just making stuff for myself, and making sort of music that feels the most personal. So yeah, it's called Three Breaths, and it's on all the stuff. And I have another one kind of in that style, done and coming out soon. I'm not quite sure when or how, but it's on the way. So that's a that's something that would be cool for folks to check out if they're interested.
Is it called James McAlister, or is it under a
Yeah,
name?
it's just under my name. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and I also have yeah. Well, no, there's music out there. If people are digging around, there's stuff to check out.
Well, you made the planetarium.
Yeah, exactly. A project called Planetarium, which is a collaborative record with Sufjan Stevens, Bryce Desner, and an awesome composer named Nico Muley. So we did like it's a record about the planets, and so
You guys were like essentially a little band for that,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, we made that record under the it kind of as equal contributors, and it turned out great. I'm really proud of it, and there's some really great songs and really interesting musical things going on there. So if folks haven't heard of that or haven't checked it out, it's and that's if you search my name or Sufjan's name or Bryce's or Nico's, it'll pop up.
Have you ever been to the Mercury Lounge in Tulsa?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of when I would have been there and who I would have seen. But is it still? I haven't been. I'm gonna just kind of own that I haven't been to Tulsa in a while. Is it still at 18th in Boston?
Yeah, it's across from the well, it's across from this barbecue spot, but it's across from that place we used to play gigs at that turned into Double Shot Coffee.
Yes,
Before
yes,
that, it was called something, and I remember playing with Lasso, Dennison Whitmer, and I guess probably Esther Drang.
yeah. That was a hot venue. I mean, that was one of the places we played so many shows there. Uh,
What what really cracks me up about Tulsa is all its different just paths over the years. I think back to early 2000s, and I think about what it has now, and it's got a music scene that people know about, and it's got guys that people know, and they're all kind of in this, you know, I guess Tulsa sound, new Tulsa sound vein. So that this kind of throwback rock and roll, uh, laid back JJ Cale thing, and it's
uh
cool and it's very defined. But I don't think any of that existed. Maybe there was some like leftover Dwight Twilley stuff going down around or Steve Pryor stuff going around. But at the time, I just think about Christian indie rock being the thing,
yeah.
only original music going on. But that can't be true, can it? Is that what was happening at the
No,
time? That's my only like perspective of Tulsa at the time.
there were
Epperly
some.
that became
Yeah,
Object or
yeah,
Esther Drang or bands like that, but otherwise,
yeah.
I don't know what was going on.
There were very few bands. I mean, and there were not to like again, like not to sort of sound because it's hard to say because we may have just been we may have just been missing the boat somehow. But yeah, I mean, uh there was the Dave Terry world like Bug and Epperly and those guys and that whole crew, which we later ended up kind of meeting and sort of joining forces with. But yeah, it's like I think Tulsa is a much different place now in terms of live music. I mean, that's what all my friends are telling me, and that's
Yeah.
so cool. And I'm man, I'm jealous. I wish I could be a part of that somehow. Just for my own identity. And that even doing this chat with you today is really cool because I I want to hold on to that somehow because that's such a large part of my musical identity is like you know being from Tulsa, I will say that one thing we haven't talked about was like there was the Jacob Fred world,
Totally.
and then remember the Wallflowers. There were the melodramatic Wallflowers.
Well, I remember that name, and I don't remember what they were about now. I remember
Yeah, it was like a
Caroline Spine. Remember that?
yeah. Wait, was that actually they were Tulsa folks?
I think so. They were kind of they were kind of a grungy grunge deal, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think our corner of the world we were kind of separate because we were like we were also trying to be really like innovative or whatever. We weren't none of our musical ventures were like really connected to mainstream rock in any way.
Admiral Twins, another one.
Oh, so that was the band that they previously were the Melodramatic Wallflowers.
Okay, but see, I think of Admiral Twin, Caroline Spine, bands like that. They were kind of in a different world in terms of yes, their music was different, but they also like having a hit was possible for them.
Yeah,
Does that make
yeah,
sense?
totally.
And I think one of them even had real hits. Like it wasn't local radio; they were on the radio, kind of
Yeah,
like the Nixons from Oklahoma City.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
But and so I think I'm subconsciously putting them in a different category of, I guess, just not indie rock or I don't know how you divided up, but
Yeah,
I'm,
that it was. That's what we thought it was. I guess when we were doing our thing, it was definitely a little bit. It was a little bit off of the center. It was a little bit left of center or whatever. Which I think was tough because it just further reduced our audience and
it's not like there's anybody to play to anyway. Why
yeah,
make
it's
it
true.
harder?
Yeah,
Why make it harder?
yeah, I know. Well, that's what I wish we could get it. It's almost like there should be a part two because there's so much I can think about talking about. I don't know, just like specifically more Tulsa things, But maybe we could do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, we'll do that for sure. I'm trying to think what else we need to talk about. Um, I don't know. Maybe nothing for now.
Well, I thanks for there. That was a mouthful. Sorry if I talked too much about really. Well, I guess that's you. We were talking about how I got from there to wherever. So I
Yeah,
guess
no,
that
I,
happens.
I've always appreciated your like just career as a cool example of someone um, just kind of playing all over the world and playing with a lot of different types of acts and but someone from Tulsa and but Oklahoma. I feel like Okies have a funny thing where we really highlight other Okies for some reason. See,
No,
someone can do it. We're not all.
there's no there's something to that. That's a real. I mean that, and I got to say that I'm so I get really excited when I get to tell people where I'm from, living here right now, or wherever I'm at. I just feel like it's kind of a gift. It's a gift to be from a place that it's a mystical place. I think especially musically and especially in terms of art. It's like a very it's such a it's not to the degree of like New Orleans, but it's such an undefinable like mixture of sort of influences and just things going on there. That's I if anyone ever asks me, I talk way too long about it about like the sort of Oklahoma rock and roll and the sort of with the British connection and then all that stuff, and then Leon Russell, and then from Leon goes into all this sort of crazy electronic innovation, and it's crazy. It's just actually it's really fascinating what and then not to mention Woody going back
Yeah,
way in terms of anyway, it's a really deeply rooted place, and I actually feel really fortunate to kind of get to sort of claim it.
yeah. No, it's true. Back to talking about R.L. Burnside for a minute, who um, the documentary was about that was on the talk yesterday, but they talk a lot about how there's just something in the actual place and that music can only come from that place, whatever
Yeah,
it whatever's happening. And I mean, you can physically play it elsewhere, but it's not it.
yeah,
And I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be as fun if you could define it. It's more fun to just go, what the heck's going on? But
yeah. That's what's so cool about the Tulsa thing. I think people are sort of remembering that, and people are doing their best to preserve that culture musically and protecting it. It's in a world where like everything is it's so globalized. Like everything's kind of we're so connected in a way that maybe it's like we're at risk of sort of forgetting some of the local specialties or something. So
yeah,
it's pretty rad. And then even Oklahoma City, or I'm such a big fan of this guitar player Jesse Ed Davis, who's from Norman.
I just got turned on to his record the other day.
I mean, yeah, everything about it, like his music, and then his guests, his playing in like other on other records. It's legendary. I mean, he's a complete legend, and and completely defied all the norms. Like I mean, he just was, and and his like his place in like guitar history or just rock history is very important, you know. So,
Yeah, love it.
dude, that's awesome. Thanks for having me on, dude.
Let me end this recording, but don't leave yet.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
but for everybody else, thank you for listening. Mercury Lounge, friends, be safe, be nice to each other, and see you around.